small habits lead to big results. That could be small healthy habits lead to great healthy results, right? Lots of good healthy results. Small unhealthy habits also lead to big results, but they lead to unhealthy results. Look inward, but know that there's hope. Because in the midst of the darkness, as big as a hurricane can be, eventually there is sunlight.
You're listening to Rise from the Ashes podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Rise from the Ashes podcast. I'm here with Tony. How do you say your second name? Because I'm terrible with
Ajhar, like Ajhar peanut butter.
Okay. So I'm here with Tony Ajhar, who has an interesting background. A typical case of Rise from the Ashes, but not so typical. He came out of the ashes and rebuilt, but I'm going to let him tell about what he does best in his world. Tony, welcome to the show, and how are you today?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing wonderful. I'm just fired up and excited to be here, and just fired up and excited for life itself.
I love that. So Tony, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll go into sort of the journey here.
All right, so I'm Tony. I'm actually a business consultant for Access Virtual Staffing. I also work on the Access insurance side, so I kind of handle both, but my main focus is the Access Virtual Staffing side, where we actually take virtual assistants and place them into many organizations, many corporations, many 501c3s. Interesting enough, I didn't know how vast it was until I started getting into it. I mean, we have from ice cream corporations to construction companies that need Xactimate insurance adjusters. I mean, the list goes on, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. And it's just been amazing to see so many people scale, so many businesses do much better by leveraging virtual assistants.
One of the things that I notice in the entrepreneurial industry, any industry, but especially the entrepreneurial industry, is the leverage of people around us. And when we look back in our lives, and the viewers can probably attest to this, nothing ever happens when you're trying to do it alone.
Very true, very true.
What's been some of the experiences in your past that have led to revelations?
From the past, I mean, we'll get into the full revelation, but I would say just in general, and I've noticed this and just kind of hit on my past a little bit, is I really was a very gifted individual when it came to sales. So I started out at a very young age. I was at a dealership, the best in the whole country, at times the world. And it was a Toyota dealership. We kind of went back and forth with John Elway Toyota in Denver and Longo Toyota in California. And I got taught, which back then would have been considered the best of the best. Although looking back and understanding sales now, it was the old school days, it would probably be some of the worst, but highly skilled negotiators, highly skilled salespeople. They did have a lot of good talent. I learned off them, but it was a solo mentality. It was I work hard, I play hard. It was I. It was nobody else. And so at a very young age, I ended up being probably the youngest general manager of a Nissan dealership in the Nissan platform. I was 25 years old when I ran the whole entire dealership, from the service department to the sales department. So I was very, very young. And I earned that by being the top salesman, top closer, top sales manager on the desk, finance. And out of that, I was always just that same mindset. If I work hard and I play hard, it's all about me, me, me. I don't care who wants to come on board. I just, I didn't care if I even wasted clients. They came in and we had so many people coming into the dealership that I just relied more on my talent and didn't care if they got upset or anything. I was going to press the envelope and press the boundaries of even ethical, I would say. And if they didn't say yes, it didn't matter to me because my percentages were so high. I knew somebody else would come in. To where nowadays, through my journey of rising from the ashes, it's not about me. It's about servitude. I truly have a love for all people. I have a great love to serve people. And my heart just completely did a 180. And so because of that, I've understood about leverage. I've understood about relationship. I feel like we're built on relationship and that we're called to be kind of like a team. I always tell people NASA does one thing at the end of the day. You know, they send missions to space, right? Now, I know we can get nuanced and get into the details of that, but at the end of the day, you have the person that takes out the trash, the person that handles networking, that fixes the computers, that maybe is the engineers. I mean, you have 10,000 people at NASA accomplishing one goal. And I feel like that is the case for most visions, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a business, whether that's a 501c3. And when we lean on each other, for one, it's releasing the burden. You know, a lot of times, and you know this very well, that we have a tendency to bear the burden, especially as entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. But I would say it runs rampant even in the business space. So when we can delegate, when we can come alongside others, when we can pour into others, when we can have that relationship, I think you really see businesses scale and individuals scale their businesses at the highest levels.
You mentioned a couple of things there. One being you were unethical back in the day. And yes, you're correct. I was never a car salesman. I wasn't ever in that industry. But even in entrepreneurial scale and personal development, there's always this vibe of being pushy to try and get the close and get the client or the prospect to say yes all the time. But I think
Very true.
Did it have a detrimental effect in other parts of your life, bleeding into aspects of personal life, home, even relationships?
I would say 100%. And I grew up in Las Vegas. So the culture itself, I think culture sets the tone of everything, whether that's culture in your business, whether it's the culture in your own household, but culture can really have an effect. It's the difference between your best players on your team or best team members burning out or being overburdened to not being overburdened, being encouraged and lifted up. It's the difference between managers that lead and aren't overbearing, right? I always say this, you know, overbearing leaders, you see this in the restaurant business. I ran a lot of fine dining restaurants, and almost, you know, and sadly, probably 70% or higher of most restaurant managers are overbearing leaders, right? And that creates dependent followers or compliant followers. So at the end of the day, they're just yes men and yes women. So they just yes, but you don't actually multiply healthy leaders. You don't actually create healthy leaders. And it was kind of like that in my own life. Being that it was all about me, it was all about me getting the sale. To me, being in Vegas, it was all about what you could attain. And so whether that was in business, I'm attaining the sale, I'm attaining more money. What do I need money for? So I can go to the casino, so I can get the free hotel rooms, so I can meet the right people, so I can know the pit boss to get the free drinks, you know, so I can spend more money. So they see that, then I get free clubs, and then I'm bringing, you know, 12 different friends to the club, you know, and free bottle service. And then it just gets more and more chaotic. You're tasting all the pleasures of the world and getting treated like a king. And it's all about getting the sale. So whether I talk to a GM of a nightclub when I was super young, actually too young to even be in a nightclub, I was talking to them as if I had known them. I have tattooed down my back, unfortunately, a closer. Yeah. And, you know, that's my mentality was. And it really affected all aspects of life, because to me, it was closing the next woman. It was closing the next GM that maybe ran a restaurant, whether that's Nobu at the Hard Rock or whether that's one of the higher up VPs at one of the major casinos. And it was how I would talk to them, tell them who I was with a lot of deception, I would say, but it got me exactly what I wanted. But unfortunately, I couldn't turn that knob off. It got to a point where you reach the highs of the highs, and I was never satisfied. So it didn't matter if it was money, it didn't matter if it was women, it didn't matter if it was free clubs and free whatever it was. At the end of the day, I always wanted something a little bit better. And so I was always chasing something I couldn't attain. And it really left me in shambles, because I went all the way to the top. And from that point, it's drugs, it's partying, that's the lifestyle. And you don't have a lifestyle of recognizing and looking inward like, hey, you have a problem. You start to justify the very thing that you do. It's like, oh, I'm a grown man and I'll do whatever I want. It's like, say something. And so I didn't let nobody tell me what to do. Even if they partied with me, they're like, Tony, calm down. We've been up a week. You've been up 2 weeks. But I just didn't want to hear it. You know, it's like, I'll do what I want when I want. And it really affected everything in my life. And it did affect my relationships, because the way I would treat my spouses wasn't right. You know, I was one of those that would be like, hey, I'm not paying for your drinks. Go out there and shake your tail. You know, these guys are ignorant. I'll just use clean language. You know, they're ignorant and they're going to buy you drinks all night long. Why, you know, we need to use that money. We'll go on vacation, right? Because they're fools. But I was putting my spouse in a horrible situation for them to be hit on and everything else. But that was my mindset, is like, close this guy, you do this, I do that. And it was very, very unhealthy. And unfortunately, there was a cost to it all. You know, I heard somebody say this: the hangover always comes. And it didn't come for a while because I had a lot. But when it did hit, I lost everything, and I lost it in a day.
Yeah.
And I was addicted. I was on the streets, homeless, sleeping on concrete in Las Vegas. Had one t-shirt, which was the one on my back, one pair of clothes, walking miles to get a bowl of soup. And I had it all. I had every fancy car, all the big houses and the caves, and it was just unbelievable. And I got very humbled. And a lot of it was from my own wrongs, and a lot of it was from also brokenness that came out of brokenness, you know, psychotic breaks and things. And so when those two kind of came together, it was just like the perfect storm.
If you're able to share, Tony, what was the catalyst for all of that? Was there a singular thing, or was it cumulative over a period of time? You said just literally in a day you lost everything. Was it cumulative and then it came to a head, or was it just one event going, oh my God, bam?
So it was both. And so I always tell people, I do business coaching, I do leadership development, and I'm always telling people small habits lead to big results. That could be small, healthy habits lead to great, healthy results, right? Lots of good, healthy results. Small, unhealthy habits also lead to big results, but they lead to unhealthy results. And so with that being said, I had a lot of unhealthy habits. And because of that, it really affected everything in my life. And so the major thing that happened was my friend, who I thought was my friend, he had a unfortunate bad habit of abusing his spouses. I didn't put up with that kind of stuff, you know, called him out quite a few times. But, you know, the thing is his spouse left him. He was going to foreclose on his house. I had a very, very big house. I had a child who was 5 at the time. I moved him into the house. I said, come stay with me till you get back on your feet, and you can go there. Within, you know, I don't know, a few months or whatever it was, he was having an affair with my spouse, with my child in the household. And I was a very tough person, did some time back in the day. And I knew at that moment, when you have a kid, it's a little bit different. You don't go and do too many foolish things that's going to take you apart. But at the end of the day, you know, lying gets put in it, and they say, oh, you did this and all that stuff. And I believe, you know, I believe in God. So I believe that there is a kind of a holy God. I believe it was the consequences. Maybe not, that wasn't my sin that time. And at the time, I didn't even believe in any of that stuff. But I think it was accumulation, and that's just kind of how the chips fell. And because I wasn't able to be around my kids, seeing him brush his teeth every day, the consequences finally caught up to me. I had a psychotic break. Hanging out in bars, I knew a lot of the people that ran the hotels, so I would always get free sports bets. You know, they'd give me like tons of little pamphlets and coupons. So I'm always betting, I'm staying in the hotels. And at the end of the day, I just was very, very broken, and it only got worse. I had a relative that called me out of the blue. I had actually just heard somebody attack me. I unfortunately knocked him out, and it didn't satisfy or anything. I was actually miserable. And even the place called me up. They said, we know it wasn't your fault. You're welcome back here anytime. And I said, no, I'm not even coming back. I was so sorrowful that I didn't even care at the time. And I had a relative, you know, miraculous or what, but they called me up. They said, would you like to fly out to the state they were in and kind of see if you can get on your feet? And I said, absolutely. I was always successful. I figured I just needed to clear my head. And it got worse when I got there, and the same habits that I had in Vegas, which is going to clubs that objectify women and all the places that wouldn't put me in the right spot. That was the life I lived. And unfortunately, I couldn't do it. Next thing you know, I'm getting involved with doctors, and Pfizer was a big, you know, I don't want to bring them up. We'll put allegedly. And, but they were pumping tons of pills, and the doctors that knew, they were just like flowing out in the Florida area all the way up the coast. And I got involved in fake MRIs, fake doctors, and they were just writing scripts, and it just got crazy and crazier. And I went more down and more down and more down.
I love interviewing people like you and having conversations with people like you, because you're so open about it now. And it's a testament to how far you've traveled on the journey. Many don't make it. Many of people who have been through similar things that you have fall by the wayside, and they stay in that cycle.
They do.
Go on.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please.
I was just going to say a perfect example is my cousin, who I love dearly. I used to go out to Miami and party with him, introduce him to some other kind. I mean, he was already partying pretty hard beforehand, but I introduced him to some other type of drugs. And I ended up having my life like completely transformed, 180, helping people across the world. And, I reached out to him a few times, and unfortunately I didn't get too much of an opportunity. He lived in a different state. I really wanted to get together with him or have him move in with me for a little bit. And it was too late. He overdosed. My aunt found him on the floor, and just that very thing, but it breaks my heart. Those are the types, and this is why I love these kind of interviews. If it could just help one person to know that there is hope, that there is people out there that will bring encouragement to you, that will love on you, that will come alongside you, that won't condemn you, that won't bash you for where you've been, that they'll pray for you, they'll be there for you, and they'll have ears to listen, to actually have a heart that kind of aligns, even if it's not perfectly with their pain. A lot of people have pain, and that I recognize. I always say hurt people, and a lot of times the brokenness within us causes kind of the brokenness of how we treat others, whether that's in business or even ourselves, unfortunately.
I think it's very true there, especially with the brokenness and what people don't want to move because a lot of them feel like it's themselves and they can't be
Yeah.
fixed, and they're too embarrassed to ask for help, or move, or to do something. Your son played a massive part in your life. Was it your son? I believe you said.
My youngest son, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Was he part of the change for you internally after the sort of the whole collapse and the
No, unfortunately, we are close, I would say, getting to that point
Good.
now, because I've contacted some of my old friends that were like his uncles, right? So we just actually went to a football game not too long ago when I was back in the States, and it was a surprise visit from them, from one of our other friends. And I was kind of waiting for the right moment to kind of bring that together and just for God to open up that door. And it was a while. And unfortunately, I didn't get to see him grow. I didn't get to have that community with him. And because of my mental illness due to the drugs and the partying, I was in and out of mental hospitals. And because of that, I was kept away from him. And so to be able to be where I'm at now, to be able to give him wisdom and give him, hope and just be there for him is great. And we're right at the doorstep of that. So I am excited for it.
Well, it's an amazing turnaround in a relatively short space of time. What was the catalyst for the change then? If it wasn't your son, what was it?
Yeah, for me, I've always said, I had my son motivation. You get spouses, you get people, for me, and I've noticed this a lot, it's a lot of times a revolving door. I always say you can't change for anybody else. It has to start with you, because and I've seen this personally, you'll try to do it for your child, you'll try to do it for your spouse, and they're like, and then you get spouses like, you don't love me and let you change. But a lot of times it's like they're in chains. And so kind of an illustration I give is it's like a person in a jail cell and they have handcuffs, and you get the family members, it could be whoever, whether it's kids, parents, in-laws, spouses, and they're looking into the jail cell and they say, hey, if you just get out of those cuffs and you just break out of the jail, there's this whole buffet out here. It's a great life and you'll have all the abundance and you'll be doing great. And all you got to do is break out. And a lot of times the spouses, this is where I think they need encouragement also, is they don't realize the person that's in that chains and in that jail cell has tried everything to break out of it. They've really tried to tear these things off. A lot of times they try in a sense of motivation and then fall, or they try in like anger, like I got to do this, and then they fall, and then they get sorrowful. And kind of like what you hit on earlier, the sorrow keeps them, even then, would they become a fatalistic mentality, like I'll never get out of here. One thing I tell people is my depression had depression. My suicidal thoughts had suicidal thoughts. Like I was so in the gutter, like having any type of hope to me was hopeless itself. Like I didn't see any tunnel. I felt like I would always be the way it was. And I just thought that it would never take place. And to kind of answer the question, what happened with me is, I never believed in any like God or anything. Although when I was mentally ill and I started seeing things and hearing things, I thought, okay, so maybe there is something spiritual out there. And I kind of grew up Catholic, but I kind of shunned it. I thought, people only show up on Christmas and Easter, and the guy makes you stand up and down. And this is not offense to them. I'm just telling you my perspective back when I was younger. And I'd show up on Christmas or Easter. I heard about the Trinity and Jesus and kind of brushed it off. I even called myself a Christian, even at my worst times in Vegas. But it was only because I believed probably there was something up there. And because I grew up Catholic, I was like, oh, maybe it's the Jesus guy. But then I threw away all of that. I didn't believe in any of it. I became an atheist. And it was just a moment in time one day where I was in my house going through a lot. My mind was a mess. I'm selling drugs. I'm doing drugs. I'm womanizing. I'm doing everything that you could imagine. And I was broken. And I just started thinking about all the people. I read a lot. I even read a lot back then. I was in jail. I read a lot. I was in mental institution. I read a lot. And I just felt like in all of history, if you just think about one name, really, even if they don't exist, I just started thinking like, who is the person that saves sinners? Although I didn't like that word, I was like, I don't even believe in it. But if you want to go by somebody that chooses to do wrong or even has bad choices, whether that's from brokenness or otherwise, right? They may just be a rebellious person. I was both. Came out of rebellion, came out of also brokenness. But I'm like, who loves people at their worst? Who forgives people at their worst if they come to him? Who, if they confess to them, he gives grace and love and all that. And so I just thought at the end of the day, when I looked at all of history, I said, I only come up with one name. And I didn't believe it, but I just shot up one of those prayers and remind me to tell you a pretty powerful story before this, but this is the testimony, kind of how it changed. I just said, hey, yo, Jesus. I probably said, yo. It was no kind of honoring in the way I said it. I was just like, yo, Jesus, because that's kind of how I talked. I said, I don't know if you really exist. I don't know if you're God. I was like, but if you are, but I heard that you're loving, you're forgiving, you're graceful, you transform people like me. You take people from the worst of the worst, from addiction to freedom, to brokenness, to freedom, to being unforgiving towards maybe people that hurt them, to them being forgiven and set free from that. I saw all these testimonies I heard. I said, and I told them, I said, I do this. I'm like, I'm selling drugs. I'm getting, talking to doctors and faking this and getting these pills and selling that and womanizing. I just started listing everything. And I listed all of it. And I said, this is what I do. But if you're willing to transform someone like me, I'd love to know what it's like to be like you. And let me tell you, it was all over after that. I felt power. I wake up the next day and I felt power that I've never felt before in my life. I mean, real like supernatural power. And because of my pride, as we talked about earlier, it was all about me, me, me. Anything I ever did good, it was me. If I was down, it was me. I needed to turn it around and turn my mindset around, whatever it was, but it was always me. And it was the first time that I'm like, I didn't actually feel like I had to do drugs that morning, right? So I throw away my drugs. First it was the mental pills, then it was the drugs. And then like 2 hours goes by, 3 hours goes by. And later it's like 8 hours. And normally if it goes that long, I'm digging in the trash. Like, what did I do? You idiot, right? Like you threw away your drugs. I'm picking it out or looking under stoves or whatever it is. And this time I didn't even care. And I'm like, that's really odd. And then the next day came and it was the same thing. And then the next day came and it was like, in my head, I'm like, I was a pretty rational person, even when I was in sales, like I said, because it was all about me. If I do something, it was me. So I'm thinking in my head, okay, I've tried to quit doing this like 50,000 times. Like, okay, maybe that prayer was answered. Like maybe you actually do exist. So I just said something like, do you deliver from anything else? And I always tell people I use the deliverance word, D word, not the Q word, quit, right? Quit relies on own strength. And we know this through January 1st. It's like the height of everybody starting and failing within 3 weeks. But I used the word deliverance. I was like, do you deliver from anything else? And I'm smoking weed. I'm doing that. I know it's legal now and everything else. Back in the day, I just wanted more of what I got. And next thing you know, the next week I was delivered from marijuana. And the next week I'm delivered from alcohol. And I'm not saying people can't drink, enjoy it. I'm trying not to be a drunkard, right? But at the end of the day, for me, I'd done it my whole life. And next thing you know, I'm set free from alcohol and feeling great. Best I've ever felt in my whole entire life. And then I'm like, well, what about cigarettes? I'm smoking 3 packs a day. Now that one took a little bit more. He was helping me to lean on him, but I was delivered. And then it was just, then the renewing of the mind started. And then it was like the person got up, before it kind of like the count of 10, where he's like resurrected from the dead. And then I started just growing and serving. And that's the first time, just the serving part. I went to some church and they're giving out free clothes and free food and free haircuts for the community. And my friend had probation. He had to join something. So he joined that. He asked me if I wanted to go. I said, you know what? Absolutely, I'll go. And for the first time, I wasn't serving myself. I'm in the line and I'm seeing all these broken people, hurting people that really need help. And I'm making plates of food and I'm folding the clothes for them. And I just started weeping. I'm like, wow, I was missing out on life like itself, like I just couldn't believe like how good it was and not for myself. It was like to be able to serve others, to really see that smile on their face and have zero to do with like me, just me being a part of this beautiful thing. that was going on. And so that kind of started it. From that point, it was getting into college. I was always talented with sales, but then it was like Bible college. Then I'm working with youth. And then I was a youth leader. And then I was an associate pastor. And then it was helping people that had addictions and going into houses, men's homes, and working with them. And it just kept going, and never turned back.
I love stories like yours. For those you can't see me or see the video and you listen to an audio, there's me stood here with a little grin on my face for the last 10 minutes, just listening to what Tony has been sharing. Before we go into part 2, and we're going to pause for part 1, is there anything you would give that person, that from that older person of you, that you would advise someone else listening to this now, just to change their life, just to give them that spark of internal hope?
Yes. So for those that are in darkness, and we know what that is, if you're truly in darkness, and like I said, if you know that you're in it, you know it. Like I knew it when I was in darkness, right? I didn't want to talk to people. I honestly hated people. I didn't like people. And I'm not saying in my humanity I didn't have a love, but that got shut down. I really felt like the world was against me, and I just couldn't get out of all the issues I was going through. And a lot of times I did push blame on other situations and on other people and stuff like that. It was hard for me to look inward. Maybe it was because I had and wore a lot of shame and guilt. And so to add anything else on, I mean, it's like the only thing that held me out a little bit was maybe put it on someone else. But I'll say this, look inward, but know that there's hope. Because in the midst of the darkness, as big as a hurricane can be, eventually there is sunlight. There isn't for some people, but if you truly, truly cry out and you truly surround yourself with people that can build you up, that can encourage you. And I'm talking people that know it. I had a lot of friends, people I would say I would die for. They would have died for me, but they didn't have the capacity to help me out where I needed it the most. I think about Avicii. He's a DJ, or he was a prominent DJ. He passed away from suicide, and he had people around him all the time. But even then, they didn't have, and I'm watching a documentary one time, and it was the first time I watched it. I didn't know about it. I knew about him earlier because I was in the clubs and stuff, but during my transition, I just kind of put away all that stuff. And I'm watching the documentary, I'm thinking within 5 minutes, I'm like, he's going to kill himself. And I'm like pleading with the people that were around him because I knew what he felt. And I'm just like, you guys got to help him here. You got to not do this, and you got to pull him away. You got to kind of call a timeout of somebody's life and really be there for them. And I saw the inevitable, and it's unfortunate, but find somebody that can really understand you. And, there's so many people out there. You see this wonderful podcast over and over, there's Rise from the Ashes. And let me tell you, those are the individuals that are right there in your community. They're right there in your area. They're in the churches around you. Wherever it is, you'll see people that have testimony that have risen from the ashes, that went from brokenness to hope, from hopeless to hope, from death to life. I just want to encourage you that there is forgiveness. There is grace. You can give grace even to others, right? Because that's a part of freedom, is forgiving others. It's so hard, but that's a step. And there's people that will be around you to be there for you and to pray for you and to lift you up and encourage you through that walk and journey. But don't ever quit. Surrender is okay. Surrendering, for me, it was surrendering to the Lord, but don't quit. Don't give up, because there is hope. There truly is hope. And I do know what it's like to be in darkness where it really seems like there is no hope. And all you're thinking is the worst type of thoughts because you just want to leave this place because anything could possibly be better. But let me tell you, best isn't that way towards death. Best is towards life. And there is hope for you.
Tony, I appreciate your sharing with us today, sharing with me and your time. For the audience, remember, share this message. This is about you. This is your Rise from the Ashes moment. Until the next time, my friends, remember, you are the miracle. And I'll see you very, very soon.